Welcome to the Africa Football Business Show. Season 2 is here. Season 2. We start off season 2, and it's all about governance across Africa. And here it is, season 2. I'm so excited for season 2. I can't believe we are starting season 2. So the Africa Football Business Show definitely is brought to you by the Football Foundation for Africa. I'm your host, Sean Osimbo, and this is a place where we create conversations that actually shape the football industry in Africa. And what a major topic to talk about governance. And we decided, you know what, we can just do it in one episode. So across board, as we continue week to week throughout season 2, we'll be talking about the governance series. This is just to know everything about Africa. We have to change the football scene in Africa. And we start off with a special guest. Karibu sana, Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa. Karibu sana to the show, who is a dean at the School of Law at Daystar University, and also an associate professor of law and associate professor of sports medicine. And you know what? What a perfect way, the perfect guest, who's also been the Secretary General of KFF. Now, you know, it's defunct. Now it's called the Football Kenya Federation. So thank you so much, Professor. Karibu to the show. That means Karibu for the people watching outside Kenya. Karibu means welcome. Welcome to the show, Professor. I'm humbled to talk to you. I'm humbled to let you just discuss and tell us about your experience, your wisdom, your knowledge when it comes to African football. Welcome to the show, Professor. So just quickly do a brief introduction. Let our audience know who Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa is.
Yeah, thank you very much, madam. Good evening, viewers. It's very difficult for one to introduce oneself, but I'll try my best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the lady has done a good job of already introducing me in part. I'm a humble teacher of the law at Daystar University School of Law, where I also help to mold younger lawyers to take over from those who are aging like myself, so that we don't leave a vacuum. I have worked also in the field of sports for many years. I have been associated with football for a very long time. The last assignment I did in football was, some of the assignments I did in football were being a doping expert for FIFA and CAF, in which then I went around several countries where tournaments were going on, collecting samples, talking to the players, and waiting for lab analysis to see who has tested positive and therefore who deserves to be punished for such violations. I have also served in the position of KFF secretary, albeit for a short while, but I enjoyed my time while it lasted. And in that position, I had a chance of contributing to the development of football in the country in a number of ways, including the promotion of the national team, development of the youth, development of referees and other match officials, and just overall development of the sport of football. I have then also served as chair of the disciplinary committees. First of all, with the Kenyan Premier League, which was running the top league in Kenya. I served with them for about 5 years in that position, and our work was to listen to cases and pass judgment or make rulings by way of saying, okay, this is the complaint, we find this team guilty or this team not guilty. And in that role, we had several complaints touching on coaches misbehaving, referees misbehaving, players misbehaving, like fighting on the field or punching each other, failure to honor matches and the like. And then after that, I joined the National Federation then, before they went to a regime, and I was again chair of the disciplinary committee, now looking again at, helping to maintain and restore sanity in the game.
Amazing, amazing. Quite the background. Very, very interesting. I know I can't wait for you to share all the knowledge that about especially governance of football, African football governance. Let's talk about this, what I'm seeing on the screen. And I know very many people are curious. It's Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa. How do you achieve Professor Dr.
That was by accident, eh? Or is it by God's design? Well, I went to school, and my initial ambition was to specialize in sports medicine, which I did, and God was with me. I went to one of the best universities in Europe, which is the Center of Excellence in Cologne. And I had wonderful professors who are officials in the National Federation of Sports Medicine. So I believe I had the best of the training. Mm-hmm. Then coming back, I started working with football teams. And something happened once when we had traveled with the national junior team to Helsinki in 1992. One of our boys punched a national of that country because he had been insulted. And there, lo and behold, police came to arrest him. Mm-hmm. Then we were 3 officials, and the other official said, "Wait, daktari, tafadhali saidia sisi shughulikia hiyo." I was not a lawyer, and I felt now I was challenged. I didn't know the law.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
2 years later, we traveled to Cairo with the national senior team, and the then team manager made a good bad mistake. Bottom line, it was a mistake. He took a passport of one player and attached it on one who did not have a passport. So in Kiswahili, it would be like, "We tumia hii passport," as if it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. Now, leaving the country, that was no problem. Our immigration does not strictly check the national team. They clear in bulk. So sometimes it's very easy to clear the wrong people. And that happened. Arriving in Cairo, again, the football officials came to meet us before immigration, collected all the passports for stamping. We just got it. But coming out, now each person had to carry his or his passport. This particular player was identified as not as carrying someone else's passport. So once again, he decided to be arrested. And once more, the two officials, again different ones though, again looked up to me to say, well, Dr. Saidia Sisi, now Kiingereza. I tried my best. Not my best as my best, but I just told the officials, look, the plane is waiting. This fellow is going back to his country. Why would you want to keep him in your jails to eat your food? Just allow us to go. We shall sort this at home. And somehow they accepted and we left. That planted the seeds of studying law. So from then on, said, I must study law. I can't keep on getting embarrassed like this. So then as I advanced in my career in sports medicine, I went to school, studied law. At that time, because of the two international experiences, my desire was to specialize in public international law. But then getting to law school, I found public international law rather easy or not very challenging. I went into law science and technology, where I then found again, I found I could match very well or bring in within very well the idea of doping. So for my PhD in law, I then researched on doping in sports and how to contain it. And now you'll be happy to note that if you read my dissertation in law on doping and follow the events that have happened in Kenya, you might be tempted to believe that they followed the script in the dissertation. I recommended two main things. Number one, the formation of an agency to take care of doping in Kenya. And then number two, to have a standalone piece of legislation or law. And in the fullness of time, or a few years later, that came to pass.
Amazing. Amazing. And that's what even is motivating, how our circumstances around us motivate us to, become better. And you've also talked about your circumstances. So, Doctor, I know you've told us so many stories.
Before you continue, you asked another question. You asked me actually a question I haven't yet summed up to. The doctor. So, I'm a doctor of sports medicine. I'm a doctor of law. But then again, as this was happening, when I was in Cologne, most of my professors were professor, doctor. So silently, I admired being like them. There's in fact one who had a PhD in psychology, a PhD in education, and a PhD in medicine. So when I think of that one, I then realize I haven't yet attained. I can say with Paul of Tarsus, I haven't yet attained, but I strive towards the goal.
Amazing. Yes. So what is the motivation now? Let's just now narrow it down to your diverse background, definitely when it comes to football. What is the motivation behind all this?
The motivation I already said, what drove me especially into getting into law. So now, behind all this, I would just say to be able to render exemplary service without feeling handicapped in one way or another. And it's very good when one feels very comfortable, very confident, when one understands one subject area very well. It can't get any better.
Amazing. Now let's go to the topic of the day, and definitely now that is for our governance series. Let's talk about how football is run in Africa. What are your thoughts on how football is run in Africa, Professor?
Yeah, I think football is well run in Africa. We have hiccups here and there, and these hiccups are to be found all over Africa. Now, I had not whispered to anyone that at some point in the course of my life, I served as the regional sports manager for Africa. about 2.5 years with a Washington-based sports organization, and that gave me an opportunity to tour all African countries and to really see how sports is managed in African countries. And I would say the challenges that we have in Kenya are same as those that abound in Ghana, in South Africa, and so on.
Yes, and let's narrow it down to Kenyan football governance, because you have also been there at some point. What do you think about how Kenya football is governed in Kenya? You, as I said, you once worked as the Secretary General of now the defunct Kenya Football Federation. Tell us about that experience, and has Kenyan football improved since then, since when you made your appearance as the Secretary General?
Oh yeah, Lord Kwaitra. First of all, in terms of governance, I think we need to appreciate the fact that football is not just the 22 men running on the field chasing after one ball. This is an international organization that has an international linkage starting from FIFA down to the continental organizations, then the national organizations, then the clubs, and so on. And that linkage is so strong such that the size of the ball that is used is determined by FIFA. The dimensions and parts of the field, those are FIFA prescriptions. So either you follow them and you're playing football, or you create your own and you're not playing football. So in terms of governance, I think it's properly streamlined, starting from the International Federation down to the clubs into the schools, because even in schools, a football field looks like any other football field, and it can't look any different. If it did, it would not be a football field. So starting from the International Federation right down to the lowest level, that part is very well streamlined. There's no problem. I think where we have had problems is in the people management. And again, here, this is a situation where you see people trying to gain an advantage over others in order to get into certain positions. And then maybe after they get into those positions, not so much focus on what has to be done to develop the game, but get in with the idea of what they can benefit from the game. Now, I think that is the area where we have really had serious challenges. And I want to say that at the time when I was in KFF, we did not have two things. Number one, the current constitution. That was in 2005. Now we have the current constitution. The current constitution has brought very good changes in terms of football and sports governance because of the way it approaches the whole thing. Now, previously and without the current constitution, it is only people who are directly affected, say by the goings on in football, that had a right to approach the court to complain. But with the current constitution, anyone can go and complain that this club's rights are being violated, and the law allows it. So it has opened up that space for people to be able to see things and act on them. Then we did not also have the Sports Act. The Sports Act came in much later, and with it came the streamlining of the Ministry of Sports, where it was broken down into parastatals and so on with specific functions. Of great note is the parastatal that is the Sports Tribunal. Previously, the manner of dispute resolution was extremely ambiguous, whereas the Football Federation itself had internal mechanisms for dealing with disputes. That's the disciplinary committee. Whoever felt aggrieved had a right to now appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Lucerne, Switzerland, and so on. Very well, very clear ones. But then where the government interfered with football, there was nowhere to really take that except, say, go to the High Court, and their cases take forever. So with the establishment of the Sports Tribunal, that has helped change the landscape in terms of governance of football and sports in general in Kenya. Disputes can be very easily attended to, disputes can be very quickly solved. And again, as I said, anyone can actually go there and say, yes, I have this complaint, I want it to be listened to.
Yes, amazing. And Professor, you are well traveled, as you've said, across Africa. You have interacted with so many FA presidents, football officials, football stakeholders also across Africa. I know there are some FAs in Africa that seem like they are working and they have set high standards. Kindly, can you name some of them, and what can Kenya as a country learn from some of the countries? They have not yet, of course, fully achieved 100% or perfect, but at some point, they have shown that they can take football in their various countries to the next level. What can Kenya learn from FAs that have actually done it?
Yeah, I can just name three. One is Egypt. The second one is Botswana. The third one is South Africa. Egypt has been on the scene for a very long time. In fact, the founding president of the Confederation of African Football was Egyptian. And that's why they set up the headquarters of the Confederation of African Football in Cairo, where it has stuck all through. They got involved in football quite early. They've set up structures. They have very well organized clubs. And then they have very good linkages between the clubs and the private sector, so that again, financing is not a big challenge. So football is football, and they play very good football. The other country that I singled out is Botswana. Botswana is a relatively young country. What makes it stand out is that it has very strong laws and enforcement mechanisms against corruption. That being so, when money is allocated for football, it actually goes to football. And this is the way it works. In Botswana, if, say, you falsify a taxi receipt, if one was traveling from the airport to the city center, maybe the taxi charges 1,000 shillings, then one falsifies it to reach 1,400. First thing is, one will be asked to refund that difference of 400. Then one will be jailed for a minimum of 3 months. And after that, no one touches that person. You become like a pariah. The punishment is so severe that no one thinks about corruption. No one thinks about defrauding football of what it deserves. As a result, they have enough money not only to contribute to the World Bank and IMF, but I mean, their economy always produces a surplus. They never borrow to run their budget. If anything, they donate the surplus to the World Bank, to IMF, where we then eventually go and say, "Saidia sisi kidogo," you know. Now, because of that kind of approach to governance, even the running of football is very well streamlined. The main challenge that Botswana has, and why it doesn't shine much on the African landscape, is population. Botswana's population stands at 2 million, which is 1/3 of Nairobi's population. Now, that way, then it becomes difficult even for the country to have 800 meters runners, to have high jumpers, to have enough footballers, and so on. But as and when they form a team, it's not a walkover for any country. And this is because resources are channeled there, and that is a model that we can also learn from. South Africa is very strong on talent identification and talent development. They start quite early with the young boys and girls in schools. Every end of term, every school holiday, camps are organized for those who appear like they have some talent, to develop their talent further. And then, as they mature and as they grow up, then they are channeled into clubs. Clubs pick them up, and lo and behold, they have a very good national team. Let me mention here also that the World Cup team that played in the US in the 1990 at the 1990 World Cup, and I'm talking about the Norwegian team. All those team members started playing football when they were 8 years old. And then from 8 years old, they ended up forming the national team to the World Cup. Now, that is the model South Africa has adopted.
Wow. Wow. Yes. So, Professor, I've heard it. Strict penalties, as you've said, Kenya can learn that, and not just Kenya, because we are also talking about African footballs. These other FAs that are struggling. Early talent development, and investing well, and just trying to cut off the corruption and everything. And that is what I think other FAs can learn from these three countries, Egypt. And yes, Egypt, I agree. I have visited Egypt, and I have seen what they do when it comes to football. They're very well invested, and they're very focused. And now let's just go to the next question, which also can kind of come from this question, and it definitely has to be, when it comes to Africa, football and politics kind of seem to go hand in hand. There are other countries trying to separate that, but it seems to be like impossible at some point. We've seen, administration, football administration, when it's overly politicized. Case in point, definitely, let's bring it home, the impending FKF elections. Why is this the case, and how can African FAs, and Kenya to be specific, have a more stable environment?
Yeah, now, thank you again for that question. The thing about African, what do we call them, football managers and politics, this will always go together. And, they mirror also the national ethos. At the national ethos, many people seek political positions so that they can either go and steal something or go to defend what they have stolen. Now, unfortunately, many people also want to go into football with that mindset, not to develop the sport, but to eat from the sport. Very, very unfortunate. Luckily enough for us on that score, the world has also changed. At the moment, we have an international convention against corruption, which is being enforced gradually by all governments, and arising from that, none other than a former FIFA president has been indicted for corruption in Switzerland. None other than a former president of the International Amateur Athletics Federations is under house arrest in France and facing a court case. So the world is gradually zeroing in on these sports officials who engage in corrupt practices. It's no longer business as usual.
So definitely it will catch up with them at some point. And now let's just go on to that FIFA, the global soccer governing body. And I know this has been back and forth across countries, across the years, and why it has a standing policy of non-interference governments when it comes to, football or any other external parties. The FIFA statute states that each member shall manage its affairs independently and with no influence from third parties. Do you think this has helped or stifled African football? Has FIFA done enough? Has FIFA done enough when it comes to African football? Because, Professor, we have seen the talent. Everyone talks about the talent. Even when Africans are obsessed with European leagues, we still talk about our very own who are, making an impact across board. When you talk about Samuel Eto'o, Didier Drogba, and right now we have the likes of Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, Naby Keita, all these people, Ndidi, all the way from Nigeria, all these people making an impact on the international scene. But when it comes to African football, it's like, okay, where is their help? Why are we not doing enough? Why is it not on the map the way it's supposed to be, Professor?
Yeah. Number one, that particular statute or that particular rule you quoted is a very old rule whose genesis lies in the fact that when sport was developing in the early days, it was seen as a pastime. Government was totally uninterested. And so people who are involved in sports started creating their own rules and trying to manage themselves away from the prying eyes of government. But then now, with time, government got interested because it saw something in it. And then some governments have been trying to interfere. That is why that statute is there. And it mainly, although it talks of third parties, it is actually government that is they're trying to keep at bay. Because again, they will still want to have officials who manage the sport, who ostensibly are dedicated to the development of the sport. That is what underpins that particular provision. And then the similar one is to be found also in the Olympic Charter, because again, all these international federations eventually link up to form the International Olympic Committee. Now, in terms of the people you have mentioned, I just want us to, I want listeners to compare what the names you have mentioned to say the number of people from those countries who go to study abroad. If you looked at Kenya, we have people going to study abroad, but we have more Kenyans studying in Kenya than those studying abroad. In like manner, we have very few Kenyan players playing in the leagues abroad than those playing in the league within. But still, your question is, if FIFA says it wants to manage without third-party interference, is it doing enough? I think on that score, it realized it can't go it alone. Partnership with government is necessary. Now, partnership with government is accepted in specific areas. For example, the government provides the land on which the stadia are built. So that forms some kind of partnership, and it's a win-win situation for both. Government is then also called upon to sponsor teams, give financial support to the teams. That is again a win-win, because then each country wants to say, we saw our flag being raised. We had our national anthem being played at an international competition. But what FIFA and other sports bodies do is at least to provide some kind of finances on an annual basis for the continuous development of the sport, and have even gone in further they have even gone further now to cater for administrative costs of the various federations. So by and by, I think they are doing something. They have been doing something, but government involvement is inevitable. The only place where FIFA draws the line is comes to elections, serikali kaa mbali.
Yeah, yes, and we've seen that, even here in Kenya, and we've seen that when Justice Ohaga, SDT Chairman Justice Ohaga, actually asked FIFA if a normalization committee can form. The elections were cancelled twice. All these things. Why is it that when it comes to, and let's take this example, Harambee Stars, as you've said, the government invests. Harambee Stars traveling. Government, we hand more than 200 million, the government does that. Or government, we want this stadium, the government does that. Why is it not now that when it comes to elections, yeah, can you're in law, can such things be changed? Or do you think if they open that can of worms, it's going to be fire? Why is it that now when it just comes to that important part of elections, the government cannot interfere, Professor?
Yeah, thank you. I already alluded to the manner in which sport developed initially. Government was not interested. So people first formed themselves, set up their own rules. Now they enjoy that space. They don't want to be monitored by government. So there's a bit of monitoring by government. That's number one. Then number two, they don't want sport to become a department of government. Let governments run ministries of sports, but let sport be sport. And this is why, again, government still will continue to be resisted, because in the fullness of time, the sports bodies have established national and international structures. So if there's a dispute touching on football, it can be adjudicated at the sports tribunal. If one has an appeal, the appeal goes to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. It does not go to the High Court. That is just how strongly the sports bodies have developed, including their own mechanisms for dispute resolution. Now, the question you have really put is, why don't they want government to interfere? Why don't they want government to really take care of this? This is because of fear of manipulation again by governments. Governments have their own agenda. The agenda of any government is to take care of the welfare of its people within that nation. Now, the interest of international sports bodies is to develop sports to the highest international standards, whereby then they stage the so-called world competitions to showcase their best talents. So to a large extent, the aims are not the same, the goals are not the same, but again, the sports organizers don't want to be squeezed out of their space. They want to have their space to feel relevant there and act from there. But then again, you touched on some very thorny thing about Mr. Haka's ruling from the Sports Disputes Tribunal. I would like viewers and listeners to appreciate the fact that the Sports Disputes Tribunal is a tribunal recognized in the Kenyan Constitution, and therefore it forms part of Kenya's laws. Over and above that, it is recognized in the Sports Act. Now, in terms of appointment, financing, and so on, this is part of government. It is part of the judiciary. So now, what the Sports Tribunal was trying to do is to order. They were not asking. A tribunal, a court does not ask, it orders. So the Sports Tribunal was ordering FIFA to do certain things. And FIFA was saying, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're a government, you cannot order us around.
Yeah.
That was the real thing.
Yes, I remember FIFA were like, no.
You can't order us around. You have no power over us. Yeah, that was it.
Yes, amazing. And this is what happens when when you have elections across most African affairs. Most of the time it's never that smooth. And now also coming now to the next questions, where key appointments in football administrations are based on patronage, networks, cartels, rather than just the merit and the leadership skills that African football is craving for. How can we mitigate against this and get more qualified people to run the sport?
You see, you are using the word qualified. Who said they are not, the ones who are there are not qualified? They are qualified. You see, now look at the elections. Certain qualifications have been put in place, both by FIFA and by the sports registrar. Now, according to the sports registrar, to be, say, president of a national federation, one must fulfill certain things. Produce clearance from the police, produce clearance from KRA, produce clearance from produce. You see? Now, those are the qualifications from that side. Now, from the other side, one must show interest and one must be interested in developing football and one must be a nation of that country. They fulfill those. Having met the requirements of both the national law and the international federation, they are qualified. You talk about patronage, but I wish you gave a specific example of patronage.
You don't want to step on people's toes. but the examples are
No, we are not stepping on anyone's toes. We are just discussing openly, and I think if there are any toes to be stepped on, they had better not overstretch too much. Otherwise, they will be stepped on by other people.
Yes. Yes. So, Professor, but what we've realized also, what so many African affairs as we are speaking, and when it comes to governance, and when it comes to leadership, most leaders have been continuously accused of, corruption in their affairs. Okay, most of them when they were campaigning and all of them, yes, as I said, qualified. And when they talk about their manifestos, you just see their hearts were in the right place. They get into the systems. And then, stories start flying left, right, center, including here in Kenya, including FKF. They have had cases of some of the things they have to explain, an OB van that cost us 120 million and we can't see it anywhere. And now the elections are here. And even some of the journalists, some of the stakeholders are bringing up these things, money lost or money spent not in a good manner. And then you have other people who are also qualified, but then you'll still, African affairs get the incumbent continuing and continuing and continuing. So that's why people would think, oh, maybe these positions in Africa, correct me, Professor, maybe belong to some cartels, belong to, other people. Some people have found ways to see how they can talk to delegates. And when the elections get there, it's a free flow for them. Professor.
Yes. And I mean, whatever you are alluding to is actually a mirror image of the wider society.
Mm-hmm.
Take Kenya, for instance. To be president, one must be able to traverse the country, make several trips and stops in a day, and that's not possible by road. One needs several choppers and so on. It is money being spent.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad, because I mean, if someone is interested, then I must be up to it. That is one. And then two, you talk about delegates. Look at our national elections. Kenyans literally move out of their houses to live on the roads and say, whoever has given me something, that is the one I will vote for.
Mm-hmm.
So some candidates come, give out something, others may not have anything to give, and they are told, we bure kabisa, kwenda, una kitu hapa. So, where does the corruption start? Look at the delegates.
Mm-hmm.
The delegates have gone through their own elections at whatever level. Now they have the opportunity to elect the national officials. You also gather somewhere. Someone comes, say, with 100,000 for each. Another one comes with 10,000. Then maybe the one with 100,000 is better. Where is the corruption starting? By the time this fellow now ascends to the throne, the fellow would have spent a lot of money. Not bad if someone is willing and is really can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then unfortunately, both at the football level and at our national elections, as soon as then someone gets elected, the first agenda is, how do I recover what I spent? And that's when you hear, all senators were bribed to do this, all senators were done this, or this committee on agriculture, they, received this committee received that. They spent money where they came from to get where they are. They have run out of resources. They still want to be there. So they're looking for means and ways of preparing for the next one. So they are ready to receive anything. Now, so when we talk about corruption, it starts at the grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
These people coming up here would have been kind of milked dry at the grassroots level. So when they start complaining, they are not being fair. They are the source of the trouble. And this is a problem of poverty. This is a problem, an economic, I would say, a socio-economic problem that we need to look for better ways of solving, so that again we are able to arrest this. I alluded to a country called Botswana. I have worked in Botswana for 2 years. Governance, even the president doesn't walk around with a motorcade. He's not anybody's enemy. Nobody wants to kill him.
Yes.
He has not offended. He has not stolen anybody's thing.
Mm-hmm.
State House there, you just walk in. The doors are open, but you will not walk out with a favor because he has no favor to give. There are structures in various places that handle matters. So you don't walk to State House to get a promotion. You go to your place of work and follow the rules there to get a promotion. Now that way, the president has nothing to fear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we are able to kind of transform our minds, re-engineer ourselves with respect to this animal called corruption, so that we get to a point where we say, enough is enough. Let us just live our lives. Let people go to elect a person because they think from the manifesto that one represents what we want. He will be able to serve us better than what we hear the other one talking about. Now that way, then, when such a people go, not having spent their valuable earnings so much, they will then go to serve the people, whether it's in football or in the national scene.
Amazing, amazing. And I really get your point. And that's why we were saying African, football needs African solutions. And what I'm getting from you, Professor, is that change comes from within. There's no way we can be requesting change from the top and we haven't sorted the mess at the grassroots football. So yes, that is, I think, one of the things that African football and this whole governance thing we can start about. Now, let's move on to now the continental body, and that is CAF. We saw Issa Hayatou. He was there, and then he exited, now left the leadership to Ahmad Ahmad. Any notable changes in African football since Ahmad took over with this current regime?
Well, as I said, the Confederation of African Football was formed in 1957. It has structures. These structures are made in such a way that the Confederation of African Football links is connected to both FIFA and the national federations. There isn't much an individual can come in to change. The individual comes to act with established structures, the established laws. Mm-hmm. So you can't really talk of a difference. Like if CAF has set up a way of selecting countries to host the Africa Cup of Nations competition or the Club Cup Championships, those rules are already in place. Whoever comes there is only coming to ensure that the rules are either followed or improved upon if need be. Mm-hmm. So we can't really look at a face and say, this face is coming here with a magic bullet to do this, to do that, to do the other. That won't happen. And remember also that this one is only at the CAF. The CAF president is only president of the president of the various national federations. Going down to each country, there are specific dynamics. A country like Togo, the president loves football. He will even allocate more money to football than, say, to the Ministry of Health. You see? Now, those are dynamics that the president of CAF cannot change. South Africa, I said, has already its own established structures for talent identification and talent development. The CAF president is not going to interfere with that.
Yeah, and now, as you say, dynamics change when you go to each and every country. So how can the football clubs, the fans, the stakeholders? Because Professor, when you talk to so many people who are obsessed, and that is why we are having these conversations about African football, because so many Africans are obsessed with European football, and at the same time they are craving to have such standards and quality of European football. We're not saying European football is perfect because they also have their drama and all that, but you've seen with some countries when they make systems work. And we also have an example, as you said, Botswana here in Africa. So what can this, African Football Club fans, stakeholders to do to make sure and to ensure that the football governance across the continent is good, and we are moving forward, and we can at least get rid of some of these issues, here and there in African football?
Yes, if you look at Europe and compare it to Africa, there's a major difference. The European clubs are very closely linked to the corporate world. Here, and the corporate world there manufactures and exports. It has money. In African countries, the same corporates only use African countries as markets. And this is why Mercedes-Benz cars are manufactured in Stuttgart, Germany, but then they have selling points all over Africa. So what do our engineers do? Our engineers from the universities become salespersons. They don't get into the nitty-gritty of how a car is manufactured, participating in the actual manufacturing process. Now, because those ones have the manufacturing and so on, they have the real money. Now, when they come, say, to Kenya, if you went to Didi Dopi for sponsorship, they have very little because they really don't have the money. That is one. But then again, we have some indigenous factories. Here, I have in mind a factory like Sony Sugar. If Sony Sugar, by way of corporate social responsibility, undertook to sponsor football in all the primary schools around it, let the company provide T-shirts, let the company organize events, provide refreshments, pay referees, do what. A lot of talent around Sony Sugar can be developed. And then now for Sony Sugar, it would also get a lot of returns because these parents seeing their children wearing Sony Sugar, even if they went to a supermarket in Mombasa, they'll be looking for Sony Sugar, not Mumias Sugar. It's a way of creating loyalty of a brand within the population. This is an aspect that many of the corporates around here have not taken advantage of. Look at, say, Citizen Radio. If Citizen Radio were to say now, we are going to sponsor the development of football in Nairobi City, or say in Migori County, then everybody around there will be wanting to tune into Citizen Radio. Everybody will want to tune into Citizen TV. You then, in a way, create loyalty to a brand. And there are financial benefits that flow back to the company from that. Now, that linkage between the local corporates and the football world is what has not happened. And this is why we keep on lamenting the other football is better. Now, the other football we are talking about, after school, children are on the field, they are playing. School holidays, they are being trained and by qualified people. The qualified people are being paid for by those corporates. So in a way, it's a win-win situation for those corporates, and you can see what's going on. Their standards keep on getting better. They can afford to pay any price for any good player from anywhere. But then us, we are interested in the little profit that we can get, and sometimes we even eat it. When you hear Nakumatt is collapsing, Uchumi is collapsing, how can they collapse when they have a dominance in the market? But then now, because they have those internal things, they cannot even think of sponsoring football in the country. And that disease afflicts very many other corporates.
Yes, and I get your point. And someone would say, before we just go to the comments, I know there are so many comments and also questions, but somebody would say corporates maybe want to invest in African football, but because of the mess in the governance and how football is run, that is why maybe they are afraid to invest their money, Professor?
Those corporates were born and brought up in this country. If there is any mess, they are part of the mess. The best they can do is to move in and help contribute to the cleaning of the mess. But then folding arms and watching from a distance, that won't wash. They are losing out also by not trying to create some kind of loyalty brands. They lose out.
Yes.
So it's not, they are not helping themselves by merely folding arms and pointing fingers at what in Wakora, oh well. No, that won't help. Let them come in. Look at a company like Kenya Breweries, East African Breweries Limited. Just come out very strongly. Said, okay, we're even going to sponsor our own team. That team is very well catered for. Players are very well paid. Coaches are very well paid. And the team is a formidable team.
Yes.
And then wherever it is, people can see Kenya Breweries, Kenya Breweries, Kenya Breweries. And if the team plays very well, everybody wants to get drunk because of creative loyalty to the brand.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, yes, there may be what appears like a mess or whatever. But then again, I think from 2005, there has been some little transformation in which corporates come in and say, we are going to sponsor you to the tune of 20 million. This 20 million is broken down as follows. I'm referring to a club like Gor Mahia or AFC. So many millions will go towards purchase of kit and boots. So much will go towards transport and accommodation when the team is moving around to play and so on. So much will go to this. So much will go to this. Now, we are releasing this much for this quarter. We want accounts. If the accounts match the budgetary projections, then yes, the relationship continues. If a mess crops up, the relationship breaks up. So even the corporates have a way of controlling the way their money is spent. But merely folding the hands or pointing fingers, that one won't wash.
Amazing, amazing, Professor. I think that is what we need to tell African football stakeholders. Stop folding your hands and just watching. Be part of the change. Be part of the cleaning the mess. That's the only way African football will move forward. So quickly, Professor, thank you for that. Let's go into the comments. We have James Rogoy who says, Professor, brilliant insight. I will come back and listen to this again and again. You see your wisdom, Professor? It's already working.
Wow. Huh.
Yes. Now we have Naki Kadu, who has a question. Is FIFA funding the governments to implement FIFA standard pitches? Is there a KPI for this?
Now, FIFA doesn't fund governments to implement that. What FIFA does is it can at most talk to government and say, we need land of this much. Remember the goal project. The government had to say, okay, how much land do you need? We need land of this size and so on. Here it is. Now, that being so now, as we want to build here offices, we want to build here hostels for players, we want to build a kind of hotel for players, we want to set up this. So the government provides the land, FIFA provides money for infrastructural development. And that is what happened also with the City Stadium. Give us the City Stadium, we are going to bring the artificial turf to lay on it.
Amazing. And then if there's any other next question or comment, but Professor, thank you so much for that. Oh, still Naki Kadu says, investment in grassroots development is fundamental with a defined development pathway and philosophy of football, not just in country, but across the continent, surely. Yeah, so that is Naki Kadu with that comment. And also James Rogoy says, Professor, how can we bring corporates in this country into supporting our sports, not only football, but all others? In my experience, corporations in countries less endowed than ours pump in lots of cash into sport. Why not here?
Yes, and I will also say those corporates are not just corporates. Those corporates are run by people we grew up with in the village, we went to the same schools with, and so on. These people running sports have former classmates, have former schoolmates in those corporates. It is a matter of striking a win-win kind of relationship. Be able to say, through this, the football will gain this much, and for you, this is what you will gain as a corporate. If they're able to talk to each other so that there's that kind of understanding, it will be all systems go.
Amazing, amazing. So, Professor, before we go to how people can reach you, how people can, because you have a lot of wisdom, and I feel like we can't even fit that in 60 minutes. Okay, let's read this comment before we continue. We have Collins Marita says, good point on re-engineering ourselves to elect people based on merit and not who handed out the most freebies. Back to Professor's point, change comes from within, and also African stakeholders to stop crossing their hands and just chilling, do not fold your hands. They have to also help in the mess. So before we go to just the last words from you, Professor, what does the future hold for African football?
Oh, African football holds a lot of promise. If you notice, like in Europe, almost every team has a black player in it. That means we have a lot of talent here. All we need to do is reorganize ourselves, re-engineer ourselves, transform our minds, and approach football with a stricter focus. And that way we shall dominate the world stage. You can imagine having a Man U team with half the team being Kenyans, then the rest
Yes.
from other African countries. Yes,
Yes.
that is possible, but we must do something. We must work on ourselves.
True. Okay, Professor, as we wrap up, thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you so much for your knowledge. I know there are people who want to continue this conversation, there are people who want to follow up with your work, there are people who want to reach out to you. Do you have any social media accounts you want to advertise and or tell people the projects you're working on currently or in the future? The floor is yours also with your last words.
Well, in terms of what is that social media account?
Social media, yeah, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn.
No, I don't have a lot of time for those. I'm afraid. But I respond to WhatsApp, and you have my number, you have my email. I respond to WhatsApp and emails. Twitter. What is the other one with the bird?
The bird is the Twitter, and there's the Instagram,
Telegram,
LinkedIn.
Yeah. I'm aware of all those, but then I rarely visit them. I don't have a lot of time on my hands.
You're busy solving the world's issues. Okay, your last words, Professor, as we wrap up.
I want to appeal to all those watching this or listening in that we need to transform our minds if we want to see better football in this country and on the African continent. We must change our mindset in the election of officials, our mindset in terms of sponsorship of football, whether schools or clubs or national team. We need to change our mindset in the mentality that we bring to sports management. Let those coming to sports management come to make a contribution, come to make football a better sport than they found it. Let those electing elect people who are capable of really driving the sport forward. Let those who have been elected now start a good conversation with the corporate world so that money can flow, sponsorship be available, the players have good boots, have good uniform, and so on. And I think that way we shall all gain and we shall all be happy.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa, for just sharing your wisdom and your thoughts about African football. And this is the governance series. But as I said, this cannot go on there's a whole team behind the Africa Football Business Show, which is brought to you by the Football Foundation for Africa. So first of all, I want to thank our definitely partners, OTB Africa, Palmer Sports, and See Beyond Leadership Forum for making this happen. Thank you so much for just coming on board and helping us create these conversations where we want to see African football. It's time for African football to rise and rise and rise and rise and continue and stop just being plastered with all the negative, stories coming out of these countries. It's time to take over because we have the talent. So it's time for us to actually, rise up and get here. So thank you so much. And also our collaborators, that is Sports Legal. So thank you so much for doing this with us. God bless you. And also a big thanks to you, Professor, for being our first guest on the Governance Series. This is season 2 of the Africa Football Business Show. It has been quite amazing. Everyone have a lovely evening, morning, afternoon from wherever you're joining us from. I'm Sean Osimbo, and I will see you next time. Take care.
Thanks a lot.